I picked up my Model 3 rear-wheel drive with a lithium iron phosphate battery pack in August of 2022. Yes, before all of the price cuts, but also before a lot of the interest rates took off. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. We didn't know about Project Highland yet. And on the opposite end of the argument, we needed a car. Our last one was starting to show signs of age with about 190,000 miles on the odometer. It wasn't starting very reliably, and we had a bunch of big road trips coming up, so we couldn't play the waiting game forever. Although, yes, there's definitely much cheaper options now. This car, after taxes and fees and everything, basically ended up costing us like $50,000, but there were no interest payments because we did buy it in cash. And yeah, there's a much better Model 3 available now. There's no doubt about it, especially now with lower leasing options. If you haven't checked out the refresh Model 3, I highly encourage you to go test drive one. It's free, and if you use my referral code in the description, I get some credits back. It can be a little belated birthday gift because none of you seem to remember me. But in many ways, of course, it's easy to know what you should have done after the fact. But as I look back, I'm reminded of that old saying that I keep saying on this channel, that Tesla is always making their products better and worse somehow at the same time. So August of 2022, okay, it was before the RGB lighting, before the ventilated seats and all that. But here's a few advantages I have with my older 2022 Model 3. That still doesn't seem old to me, but just knowing Tesla and how many things they've changed since then, it honestly does feel like that was so long ago when they were manufacturing Model 3s like this. But for one, I got one of the last Model 3s with ultrasonic sensors, which is pretty cool. So if I'm doing a road trip or I feel like using my referral credits on full self-driving on some of these days, then I actually get Summon, I get Smart Summon, and I get Auto Park. All things that Tesla claims are included with the full self-driving package, and yet all Teslas without the ultrasonic sensors are still not capable of accessing these features. Yes, there's been some updated parking visualizations, which interestingly they haven't brought to the older Model 3 with the ultrasonics. I wonder if that's Tesla's subtle way of acknowledging that the park assist on ultrasonics is still better. I don't know, maybe it's not and they're just lazy. You can interpret which one it is, but I have all the same camera sensors that the newer Model 3s have that are not on hardware for. Obviously, with the big Project Highland refresh, they updated the cameras and the frame rates a little bit, but I have everything needed for that updated parking visualization, and yet I updated it last night. They're still not letting me access it. So weird. But the other thing I gain access to with this older Model 3, it's actually because I specifically ordered it back in February. It was about 2 years ago, around this time of year. Well, back then, Tesla said anybody who ordered a Tesla got lifetime standard connectivity with the car. Tesla says what's included with standard connectivity is navigation, which is a little bit confusing because it's hard to imagine what the Tesla screen and the user interface would be like if you didn't have navigation. But yeah, after about July 20th of 2022, they said all future Tesla orders will now come with just 8 years of standard connectivity. And then after that, who knows? We'll have to find out what happens in 2030 when people actually start exceeding the 8-year mark on their vehicle ownership, and maybe they'll just force you to pay to access navigation, and if you don't want to pay for it, then I guess you'll have to fall back on your phone for navigation somehow. I don't know, it's gonna be weird, but they probably realized they were promising lifetime navigation support, and there is some cellular data that still works. Even if you don't pay for premium connectivity, you still need to know how many superchargers are at a supercharger when you're en route to that location. That requires cellular data, and they maybe were thinking that the modems in the car would be dated after a certain number of years. So because I got a car with lifetime standard connectivity, that means Tesla has to ensure that all of those basic navigation features continue to work even if the GPS or the modem gets outdated over time. Whereas if you ordered a car after July 20th of 2022, they don't necessarily have to promise you that. So after 8 years, if your modems get outdated or something, maybe you're not going to know how many cars are at each supercharger, or you're not going to be able to plug in addresses and locations as easily if you're on the go and you don't have Wi-Fi nearby. I don't know exactly how it's going to work in the future, but I'm glad I don't have to worry about it with this car. The other thing that was included back when I originally placed my order with this Model 3 was the mobile connector. Now that's an additional charge of about $240. So yes, well, I did still technically pay way more for this car than what the new ones are going for now. The price gap between the two 2022 might not be as massive as you think, especially considering I took delivery of my car about 1 week before the state of California repealed a point of sale rebate. So we got about $750 straight off the price of the car as we took delivery of it, and that's no longer available in California. They took it away, seriously, really quickly after we took delivery. So I was grateful that my delivery date didn't stretch into September of 2022. That's when they got rid of that rebate. Also, the existing Model 3 still don't qualify for the full $7,500 credit. They don't qualify for any of it, actually. So the Model Ys are absolutely where the deals are right now, which makes sense. The Model Y is an amazing vehicle. Tesla's cranking them out like no tomorrow. But I must admit, as cool as the Model Y is and as practical as it is, if we're just talking purely aesthetics, I tend to like the Model 3 a bit more. At the end of the day, we don't typically move a lot of cargo around in our vehicles. It's usually just me and my wife and maybe one other family member. And the storage space on this car has been wonderful. It's been fantastic. We've got a frunk, and we honestly use that more than the trunk. It's just nice to have like a weather-sealed location for food that we're bringing to friends' houses, or my laptop or my microphone if I'm ever working on the go. It's just a perfect little storage area, and because we normally back into our carport like this, it's easier to access than walking all the way to the back of the car to get to the trunk. But the trunk is huge. I keep our tennis stuff in the sub trunk all the time, and we even did some car camping by just folding down the second row, and it went surprisingly well. We would do it again, and even with the smallest battery pack that Tesla basically includes in their cars, we were still able to run the HVAC all night. We only lost about 14% of the battery. So as long as a supercharger is relatively close by, it's a great car camping machine. We stretched out our legs pretty well, and you couldn't really do that with the Cybertruck because there's no way to drop that rear window, and the vault is not completely water sealed, whereas the inside of the cabin here is. So the Model Y is great, and it's a hatchback, and it's so much more practical, but the Model 3 just feels a little bit more sporty. It's a little bit lower to the ground. It looks a bit more intentional to me. I guess the way I'm looking at my Model 3 now is like, this is kind of the peak version of the original Model 3 design, okay? Like the Highland, yes, it's better. It's a superior vehicle. I've driven it twice now. Seriously, the test drives are so much fun. Be sure to book one, but it's in a different class of its own. The refresh honestly feels like a brand new car, but it wasn't available when we were ready to take delivery. And as far as this more legacy original design of the Model 3 goes, we basically have every option that was ever included. Included mobile connector, which is no longer the case. We got the chrome delete, so we got the matte black trim on the windows. We have the heated steering wheel, which I didn't think I was going to love that much because we took delivery of the car pretty much in the middle of summer. But after that first winter, and now in the middle of our next winter, oh my God, heated steering wheel, so freaking handy. I love that. And we have the power to trunk, especially when you're doing a grocery run, moving a bunch of stuff to the back of the car, and you can just pop the trunk really easily from your phone. It opens all by itself and closes by itself. Not all Model 3s had that. And relatively, this was within the first year of Tesla finally using lithium iron phosphate battery packs within the United States. So I get to charge my battery to 100% every single day. And yeah, there's very little degradation. I know that's always everybody's first question. When I charge to full, the car is telling me it gets about 260 miles, but I wouldn't rely on just that little battery indicator because it's not entirely accurate. And there's been some times where I'll charge it to full and it'll say 260. Other times I'll charge to full and it'll calibrate for a little longer and then say 262 or 263. Not all that much less than what it originally shipped with, which was about 270. So very little degradation. And thanks to you guys using my referral code so much, we've been supercharging a lot because that is so much more cost effective now than charging from home because of crazy PG&E jacking up the prices. We've been pretty brutal to this battery pack. Even though it says to charge it to full every week, we don't necessarily always do. Sometimes we forget, and there's been a lot of supercharging, probably way more supercharging in the last year than actually home charging, which traditionally is pretty bad on the battery, but when you got lithium iron phosphate, it's pretty difficult to kill this thing. It is a more stable chemistry. It's not as energy dense, but the cycle life is just so much higher, and it's showing. You know, at the time of recording this, I'm actually closer to 34,000 miles on the odometer. Yes, we've driven this thing a lot. I'm averaging 235 watt hours per mile, which I think is pretty good. As an efficiency guy, this is better than anything I've seen in the Model Y ownership ownership forms. It's very hard to get Model Ys to get efficiency that good. Not that it matters at the end of the day. I don't know. I just care about little details. Fairly little maintenance. I've basically talked about the 3 different service appointments we did within the first year, but nothing more to report after they replaced this seat. Yes, that was annoying that the seat sensor was malfunctioning and we kept getting pop-ups on the screen. They took care of it and it was covered under warranty, so they even fixed the headrest to match the design of this headrest at no additional charge. They didn't need to do that. We just said, hey, the back design here is not matching with the driver's seat. Can you make sure they match? So we got 2 brand new headrests for free, which is pretty fun. We're still on the original tires. They're holding up fairly well, probably because I'm a featherfoot. I'm not a big performance guy. I'm always driving the car in chill, and it's still plenty fast for me. Again, we bought the slowest Tesla on purpose. We're not really big roller coaster people. Every day I get in it, it still brings me so much joy. The wireless chargers are really handy. I remember the original Model 3s didn't have that. We also have the AMD Ryzen processor powering the infotainment, and it's still very snappy, very reliable. The only slight issues we've had with software is that sometimes the screen likes to freeze. Like, it's still functioning, it's doing everything, but it won't listen to me touching it. And I just do a hard reset by holding down 2 of the scroll wheels, and then it's fine. It's only happened about twice in the year and a half of ownership, so not a huge deal. Of course, the auto wipers are still not as good as they should be. I miss the days when Tesla actually included rain sensors in their cars. I know they're chasing those profit margins, but I'm sorry, these cameras, no matter what software they put in this car, never seem to know how to operate the wipers. Either they're way too active or they're not active enough. It almost feels like it's constantly doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do. But also, one advantage, a small one, we have over the Project Highland Model 3, I let my wife do the second test drive, so she got to check it out as well. And she was not a big fan of the blinker buttons, especially when you're kind of navigating out of a parking lot. There's a lot of times where you need to activate the signal and you're kind of mid-turn, and trying to track those buttons with your thumb can get a little annoying. So I'm grateful that we just have our good old-fashioned stalks behind the steering wheel. Feels a bit more clean, and I don't have to fumble around for buttons as much. It feels fairly intuitive. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And it works great here. And even though I know it's the partial premium sound system and everything, I can still blast music in here. Even without the dedicated woofer, I still think it sounds amazing. Maybe it's because I came from a much older car that wasn't as fancy as this one. To me, this is a luxury car. I know it isn't to many people on YouTube out there, but I'm very happy with it. And if you're considering buying used, I think buying from mid-2022 is still a very decent option if you can get it for cheaper than obviously a new Model 3. New Model 3s are great and much more affordable than they used to be, especially if you're willing to pay in cash. I know the interest rates are still pretty high right now compared to what they were a few years ago. And I know on this channel I talk a lot about future products like, oh, maybe one day I want to get a rear-wheel drive Cybertruck, or maybe one day I want a Rivian R1T, or of course the Aptera is very exciting. And I can't wait to check out more of those vehicles as they come out in the future. But I must admit though, every time I talk about that in a podcast or a live stream, maybe one day I want to buy one of these cars or those cars, all of those wishes and dreams kind of dissolve away as soon as I get back into this car and I start driving it again. I just go, wow, this is still so smooth. It's so reliable. It's so comfortable, and there's nothing really wrong with it. And just keeping this car and driving it until it doesn't work anymore, I think is always going to be objectively cheaper than buying any new car. Doesn't matter how cool the new cars get, the fact that this has NACS, it's reliably able to supercharge, and we've taken it on so many road trips and had a marvelous time. It's honestly really hard to beat for me. And when you don't have an EV, it's a lot harder to wait. I know everyone's constantly probably telling you, just wait for the refresh, or wait for the next gen vehicle that'll be cheaper, or wait for this Cybertruck, or wait for that Aptera, wait for that Rivian. It'll get better over time if you wait longer. And yeah, that's probably true, but you're able to wait a lot more easily when you already own an EV that you really like, that has like meaningful range and is capable of DC fast charging pretty reliably like this one. Once you're in it and once you're living with it and driving around with it, it's like, yeah, all those new cars are great. You know, I love the Model X in particular, and I hope I get to own one day, but at least right now, it's like, that's not really going to offer me that much more than what I'm utilizing this car for anyway. So because I'm with an EV that's not that old and I'm really happy with, I'm comfortable waiting. I can take my time now because I'm not stuck with an old gas car like I was before, where I was like, okay, I've been waiting a while for the right EV and I'm sick of waiting because I don't want to keep paying for gas. So now that we've finally made the switch and we're enjoying it and continuing to drive it, been doing so many runs to the airport because our car can do it so much cheaper than all of my friends and family members. So we've just become like the shuttle service now, but I can be a lot more patient now, essentially, for whatever our next car is going to be. I can comfortably wait and just be like, you know what? The Model X or the Cybertruck or whatever, it's not exactly the trim I want yet. It doesn't have all of the exact features I'm looking for in a next-gen vehicle, so I'm just gonna wait because I'm happy with what I have. There's no rush, there's no urgency to upgrade for me. Sorry if you were hoping for me to buy new cars every couple of months like some YouTubers do. I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of money. Sounds like a lot of fun, but that's not what I'm gonna be doing here on this channel. And because I love this car so much, I'm gonna be a lot more picky with the next one. Like, I want it to be reasonably affordable, and after seeing what the Cybertruck is capable of doing, I really want steer-by-wire, especially if I get a vehicle with a yoke in the future. I really want to make sure the car has that dynamic steering ratio based on speed. Also, with these incredibly high electricity prices in my area now, I want power share, not so that I can charge other EVs, but specifically so that I could charge my car during off-peak hours and then power my house during the peak hours. I want to have a giant power wall that also powers my car that I can take around with me. I love the idea of turning the giant battery pack in my car into energy storage for the house, but I just don't want a pickup truck. You know, I don't want a huge giant vehicle that's less efficient and harder to park and harder to navigate like the Cybertruck is. I want it to be in a smaller, more efficient design. So until Tesla has something, or any company has something like that, that of course has to have NACS, that's a necessity for me. But yes, I would like something with steer-by-wire. I would like something with a bit more storage space, or definitely want ventilated seating. Although I've heard people say that Tesla's ventilated seats don't age as well. Something about all of the holes being in that texture makes it a bit weaker, and people have said that these more basic design seats that aren't ventilated actually tend to age better. So that's another unintended perk of having non-ventilated seats. But white interior is holding up great, by the way. They still look very clean. But yeah, I'm taking my time because I love this thing and I want to drive it until the wheels fall off. And I just know I haven't been reporting on it much, but I guess that's because the ownership experience has been pleasantly boring. You know, this car just goes, it works, it's reliable, and there's not too much to talk about other than just like, yeah, it's a great car. There's much better ones out now, but that's okay. I think that Tesla and other companies have to come up with reasons to convince people to not buy used, and refreshing makes a lot of sense because you can save yourself some money and get a 2022 Model 3 for cheaper. Yeah, that's honestly still gonna be a really, really good deal. That if you don't care about the Project Highland Model 3 refreshes, then yeah, this is a great option. I would buy this car again too. But anyway, I appreciate your guys' support for allowing me to save up the money to buy this car and continue to enjoy it and experience it. If anything goes wrong, I will definitely keep you posted on it. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.